On this day in history, June 23rd, 1314, as part of the First War of Scottish Independence, the Battle of Bannockburn, south of Stirling, begins. Included in the following is an excerpt from the 1944 edition of the Encyclopaedia Britannica, going over the history of the town. Bannockburn, a town of Stirlingshire, Scotland. Population from 1931, 4,481. It is situated on the burn from which its name is derived. The Bannock, Gaelic Ban Och, white shining stream, an affluent on the Forth. The town lies 2¼ miles south by southeast of Stirling by the LMS Railway, and now has woolen manufactures, chiefly tweeds, carpets, and tartans, though at the beginning of the 19th century it was only a village. The boarstone in which Bruce planted his standard before the battle in which he defeated Edward II in 1314 is preserved by an iron grating. A mile to the west is the Gillies Hill, now finely wooded, over which the Scots camp followers appeared to complete the discomfiture of the English, to which event it owes its name. Bannockburn House was Prince Charles Edward's headquarters in January 1746, before the fight of Falkirk. The famous Battle of Bannockburn, June 24, 1314, was fought for the relief of Stirling Castle, the principal strategic key to Scotland, which was besieged by the Scottish forces under Robert Bruce. The English governor of Stirling had promised that, if he were not relieved by that date, he would surrender the castle, and Edward II hastily collected an army in the northern and midland counties of England. Bruce made no attempt to defend the border, and selected his defensive position on the Bannockburn, 2½ miles south of Stirling. His front was covered by the marshy bed of the stream, his left flank by its northerly bend towards the Forth, his right by a group of woods behind which, until the English army appeared, the Scots concealed themselves. On the 23rd, the van of Edward's army, which heavily outnumbered the Scots, perhaps 25,000 to 15,000, appeared to the south of the burn, and at once dispatched 2 bodies of men towards Stirling, the first by the direct road, the other over the lower Bannockburn, near its junction with the Forth. The former was met by the Scottish outpost on the road, and here occurred the famous single combat in which Robert Bruce, though not fully armed for battle, killed Sir Henry Bohun. The English detachment which took the other route was met and after a severe struggle defeated by a body of Scottish pikemen near St. Ninians. It would seem probable that the main passage of the English army took place at a point between these 2 crossings. Early on St. John's Day, the Scottish army took up its assigned posts. 3 corps of pikemen in solid masses formed the first line, and Bruce had with him, in reserve, a 4th corps of pikemen and a squadron of 500 chosen men-at-arms, kept mounted under Sir Robert Keith, the Mareschal of Scotland. Edward's cavalry were formed in 9 or 10 battles, arranged in 3 lines, with the unwieldy masses of foot behind. Ignoring the lesson of Falkirk, the mounted men rode through the morass and up the slope, and it would seem that the attack was precipitated before the English dispositions were complete. It failed to make any gap in the line of defense, and the battle became a melee. The Scots, with better fortune than at Falkirk, and later at Flodden, presenting always an impenetrable hedge of spears, the English, too stubborn to draw off, constantly trying in vain to break it down. So great was the press that the battles of the second line, which followed the first, were unable to reach the front and stood on the slope, powerless to take part in the struggle on the crest. The advance of the third English line only made matters worse, and the sole attempt to deploy the archers was crushed with great slaughter by the charge of Keith's mounted men. Bruce threw his infantry reserve into the battle on a flank, and the arrows of the English archers wounded the men-at-arms of their own side, and the remnants of the leading line were tired and disheartened when the final impetus to their rout was given by the historic charge of the Gillies, some thousands of Scottish camp followers who suddenly emerged from the woods, blowing horns, waving such weapons as they possessed, and holding aloft improvised banners. Their cries of "Slay! Slay!" seemed to the wearied English to betoken the advance of a great reserve, and in a few minutes the whole English army broke and fled in disorder down the slope. Many perished in the burn, and the demoralized fugitives were hunted by the peasantry until they recrossed the English border. 1 earl, 42 barons and bannerets, 200 knights, 700 esquires, and probably 10,000 foot were killed in the battle and the pursuit. 1 earl, 22 barons, and bannerets, and 68 knights fell into the hands of the victors, whose total loss of 4,000 men included, it is said, only 2 knights. The fundamental lesson of the battle, that of the folly of launching a mounted attack against unbroken pikemen, was turned to account at Duplin, 1332, and Culloden Hill, 1333, and led in turn to the repeated victories of the 100 Years' War, wherein the English archers disorganized the enemy before any decisive stroke was attempted.